We will turn now to our panel for some political analysis. Amy Walter is national editor at Cook Political Report and host of The Takeaway. Eliana Johnson is editor-in-chief of the Washington Free Beacon. Paula Reed covers the White House for CBS News, and Ed O'Keefe is on the campaign trail for CBS. Good to have you all here. Ed, I didn't know that they allowed you back in Washington.
I didn't either, but here we are.
But that, I think, is the first sort of uplifting, so to speak, Bloomberg clip. There were a lot of really damaging things that his campaign had to respond to this week.
There really were, between, again, his past comments on stop and frisk and his support for it, about redlining, and of course all the issues that were, dealt with at Bloomberg News and Bloomberg LP back in the day. They were preparing for this, and I think it's telling when on a Sunday morning, Kellyanne Conway, Joe Biden, and Bernie Sanders are all in agreement that there's something wrong with Mike Bloomberg. And the problem is he's spending so much money and he's climbing in the polls. And his opponents on the Democratic side are terrified of what's coming, because he's either going to do well enough to accrue several delegates in these 14 Super Tuesday states, or it will have been seen as a foolish investment. But if it was so foolish, they wouldn't be so focused on him. And I think they know what's coming.
And there was one particular piece of audio tape that I want to play for our audience here, because to hear Michael Bloomberg saying it himself is another matter. Let's listen to Stop and Frisk.
95% of your murderers and murder victims fit one MO. You can just take the description, Xerox it, and pass it out to all the cops. They are male, minorities, 15 to 25. That's true in New York, it's true in virtually every city. And that's where the real crime is.
So Mayor Bloomberg has since apologized for this policy, and some on his campaign said he will just have to continue to do so. Right. How do you beat the tape, fight the tape, so to speak?
Well, he's got the ads going for him, and in fact, as we were sitting waiting to come on, we watched a number, I think at least two of them come on during this broadcast.
Amy Klobuchar said it was unconstitutional.
And the judge said it was unconstitutional, which is why they are not doing it anymore. Look, Democratic voters have been spending the last year telling us we want a candidate who can beat Donald Trump. And thus far, they have not found that candidate. They keep splitting among that group of candidates who's selling themselves as the most electable. And ultimately, those voters are going to have to decide, and this is what the Bloomberg campaign is counting on, is there's no perfect candidate. There's no candidate that hasn't had to apologize for things they've said or voted on or done. And so will you be willing, in the name of electability, be willing to overlook and get past someone's past? Or will you set a bar that's high enough that many of these candidates just are never going to make it?
Look, when I look at Michael Bloomberg, he reminds me of somebody who has achieved some measure of political success. He is a billionaire New Yorker who has switched parties and has said many impolitic and politically incorrect things that have offended women and minorities. He reminds me a lot of Donald Trump. And I think there may be some appeal. I don't think that these attacks will hurt him. What I do think we need to see, like we saw with Donald Trump, is how Bloomberg reckons with these attacks on a debate stage and on the campaign trail. And he has ducked that, and I do think that will hurt him if he doesn't start doing it.
And Paula, the president himself, not only does he have some of his advisors, as Ed indicated on the Sunday shows today, hitting out at Mike Bloomberg, he's been tweeting a ton about this candidate.
He took the bait, right? His advisors have been telling him, just ignore him. It doesn't matter. Focus. We got to focus on those suburban voters. We're going to try to get some black voters back, expand our electoral college chances. But he took the bait. And it's interesting, he took the bait not only taking shots at his height, but also on stop and frisk, which is amazing because for the past 7 years, the president has been tweeting his support for stop and frisk. Right. So to now suggest that Mike Bloomberg is a racist because of what you heard on that tape, that's a remarkable strategy.
And I think that's part of the difference here, is that Bloomberg has apologized. He has sought to distance himself. He has convinced black leaders in this country that he doesn't feel that way anymore. He's disavowed it. Plus, he's putting his money into causes that are clearly priorities to Democrats, whether it's the 10-year investment in Virginia to get Democrats for total control of state government that they now have, or into the Sierra Club and to Every Town for Gun Safety.
2018 congressional races.
Exactly. Democrats look at that and go, oh, he really has put his money behind this, unlike the other New Yorker who is politically incorrect, who barely spends any of his own money, sets up charities that are clearly fraudulent. So, if people can see beyond that, then, perhaps Bloomberg will be just fine.
There was also tape today from an interview that Univision did. Jorge Ramos, an anchor there, pressed Joe Biden on the Obama administration immigration policies. I asked one of our guests earlier about it, the 3 million who were deported. And he was kind of on his heels in this exchange. Let's listen.
All the unaccompanied children were coming across the border. We tried to get them out. We had kept them safe and get them out of the detention centers, that essentially that center, that were run by Homeland Security, and get them into communities as quickly as we can.
Many people would say there were cages.
Well, look, you're not telling the truth here about the comparison of the two things.
I'm saying that the numbers in your administration were not the same as the ones we're seeing right now with the Trump administration.
No, beyond that. But look how quickly we got them out and got them back to families. Look how we didn't engage and we sought the relatives here. We sought to get them into safe communities. We sought to get them out of the control of Homeland Security, to get them safe. But they came unaccompanied.
And what you saw there in Jorge Ramos's hand was a picture of children in cages. This is something that President Trump has defended having done, saying they're not cages. His administration said they're cage-like structures. And oh, by the way, this happened during the Obama administration. Ramos had a picture showing it happened during the Obama administration. Is immigration a weak point for Joe Biden?
It could be, especially in Nevada. You have a younger, far more liberal base of Latino voters in that state who have felt the direct impact of immigration policies during the Obama and Trump years. He's trailing Bernie Sanders now among them. If this, permeates over the next week, certainly it could create weaknesses. It is telling that he now calls it a mistake, having been confronted about it over the last several months by Julian Castro and some of his other opponents, having disregarded questions about it and batted them away. To now go to Nevada, where immigration is a far more pressing and relevant issue, and say so, I think is proof of how quickly the narrative of these primaries can change depending on the state you're in. He didn't want to discuss this in Iowa and New Hampshire. He'll happily discuss it now in Nevada.
I see it a little bit differently. I think the problem with Biden and immigration is his response to it. I think if he wanted to own that moderate lane, he should be vocally defending the Obama administration's policies on this by saying this is an endemic problem that multiple administrations, Democrat and Republican, have been dealing with it. We dealt with it the best we could. Trump's strongest supporters are on the issue of immigration. Biden needs to win some of those Obama-Trump voters back. And I think explaining and backpedaling and doing so in such a tentative way is a fail for him.
Well, he's got to win a primary first. And so now he can't afford to not say it's a mistake because he'll lose that primary.
But if you're running as, I'm going to return us to a pre-Trump era, it's going to be just like Obama. Remember me? I was the vice president under this guy. Then you're going to own all of that, and to have a better response is going to be very difficult. So you either are going to be the Barack Obama 2.0, or you're not.
Paula, on this program last week, Senator Lindsey Graham revealed that there was this channel.
Huge news.
To deliver information from Ukraine gathered by Rudy Giuliani on Joe Biden.
Exactly.
To directly to the Justice Department that is already investigating Rudy Giuliani. I feel like that story we kind of moved on from, but that in and of itself is tremendous, not just for Joe Biden saying the story's not going away, but what this says about what the Justice Department is doing.
That's so true. It was such huge news. The next day, the Attorney General had a press conference where he took one question before exiting the stage, and thankfully it was on this. And he confirmed that, yes, in fact, he has tapped a U.S. attorney to review whatever it is Rudy Giuliani brought back from Ukraine in that suitcase and any other information that people are gathering in Ukraine. And even though the Roger Stone case is what really brought to everyone's attention this week, the Justice Department, Bill Barr's role in using his stature to really bolster the president, the fact is this is one of several reviews. This is one of several U.S. attorneys who Barr has tapped specifically to look into one of the president's pet issues. He has a U.S. attorney in Connecticut reviewing, once again, the origins of the Russia probe. We now also have a review of politically charged cases in D.C., including Mike Flynn. And this is why right now there is a crisis of confidence within the Justice Department. There are concerns that the president's pet issues are getting a special look, and that, again, Barr is using his stature and his authority to help the president. He said this week, I don't need to be bullied. Well, yeah, you don't necessarily need to be bullied, but if you know all of these issues are important to the president, you're clearly giving them validity through these reviews while simultaneously receiving a criminal referral from the CIA and passing on it without even interviewing a single person.
Senator Kennedy said, oh, it's a matter of the president shouldn't be tweeting. But you're saying this goes far deeper than the Justice Department being upset by a tweet.
Absolutely. The crisis of confidence is not just about Roger Stone. It's not just about the Attorney General overriding career prosecutors and putting his opinion into that case and revising the sentencing recommendation. It's systemic. It's from the very beginning of his tenure. He came out and he framed the Mueller investigation's findings in a way that even Robert Mueller said wasn't accurate. And those are the big concerns within the Justice Department. Is the Attorney General putting his thumb on the scale to help the president either on these issues, giving them validity, even though there's very little expectation that any of these reviews will result in criminal charges. It's a huge concern among the rank and file, which is why Barr did that interview. You don't need to do an interview to tell the president something. He's talking to the public, he's talking to the rank and file, because he knows the optics here are not good.
And Amy, you heard Senator Klobuchar talk about this because she has some oversight. You also had Senator Warren sign on to something calling for his resignation. You have a letter from 1,000 different prosecutors who've served under Republicans and Democrats saying this. Does this resonate outside of Washington? Because you're laying out a constitutional crisis here.
I think voters have been pretty clear since the very beginning of this administration about what they are expecting from this president, and quite frankly, it hasn't changed since the minute he was sworn in until now. The real question is what happens to those people, those voters who do feel cross-pressured. We're seeing them right now, people who say the economy is good. I think the president's doing a good job on the economy, but I don't like the job he's doing as president. Those are the folks, part of the reason why they're not giving Trump their vote or the stamp of approval of his presidency is because of things like this. So he's not losing his base over it, but he's not winning back those voters who he should be winning on the economy.
All right. Thanks to all of you for your analysis.